Sarah Martinez looked like any other tourist walking through Bangkok's busy airport. She wore a simple white t-shirt, faded jeans, and carried a backpack covered in travel stickers from around the world. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she had that tired but excited look that comes from long flights and new adventures. At 32 years old, Sarah had been traveling for 3 months across Southeast Asia. She told everyone she met that she was taking a break from her stressful job back home in Chicago. People assumed she worked in an office somewhere, maybe marketing or accounting. She never corrected them. The truth was much different. Sarah was a commercial airline pilot with 12 years of experience flying passenger jets. She had logged over 8,000 flight hours and was certified to fly Boeing 737s, 757s, and 777s. But she was tired of the demanding schedule, the pressure, and the way some passengers treated crew members. She needed time to think about whether she wanted to continue her career in aviation. As she waited for her connecting flight to Phuket, Sarah noticed something odd. The departure board showed that flight TH-892 to Phuket was delayed. Then delayed again. Airport staff were whispering in small groups, looking worried. Passengers were getting restless, asking questions that the ground crew couldn't seem to answer properly. Sarah's pilot instincts kicked in. She recognized the signs of a serious problem. The way the ground crew avoided eye contact, the nervous energy in the air, the sudden appearance of senior airport officials. Something was very wrong with that flight. She approached the gate counter, where a young Thai woman was trying to calm down angry passengers. "Excuse me," Sarah said politely. "Is there a problem with the aircraft?" The gate agent looked stressed. "Just a small technical issue, ma'am. We're working to resolve it quickly." But Sarah knew better. In her years of flying, she had seen every type of delay. This wasn't about weather or minor maintenance. The body language of the maintenance crew she spotted through the window told her everything. They were moving with the kind of urgency that meant serious trouble. An hour passed, then 2 hours. The official announcements kept saying minor delay and technical difficulties, but passengers were becoming increasingly frustrated. Some were demanding refunds, others were arguing with gate agents, and a few were already rebooking on different flights. Sarah watched a maintenance supervisor walk quickly past the gate, talking rapidly into his radio. She caught a few words in English mixed with Thai. Hydraulic failure and backup systems. Her heart sank. Hydraulic problems were among the most dangerous issues a commercial aircraft could face. If the primary hydraulic system failed, pilots would lose control of essential functions like steering, braking, and landing gear operation. It was the kind of problem that could turn a routine flight into a disaster. She looked around at the 320 passengers waiting to board. Families with small children, elderly couples on vacation, young backpackers like herself. None of them knew they were potentially boarding a plane that might not be able to land safely. Sarah faced a difficult choice. She could board the flight and hope the maintenance crew had fixed the problem properly. She could switch to a different flight and leave these people to whatever fate awaited them. Or she could break her cover as a tourist and reveal her true identity as a qualified pilot. The gate agent announced that boarding would begin in 30 minutes. Passengers cheered and started gathering their belongings. Sarah watched them smile and laugh, completely unaware of the danger they might be walking into. She thought about her decision to take this break from flying. She had wanted to get away from the responsibility, the stress, the weight of carrying hundreds of lives in her hands every time she went to work. But now, sitting in this airport halfway around the world, she realized she couldn't just walk away when people needed her expertise. Sarah took a deep breath and walked toward the gate counter. The young Thai agent looked up with tired eyes, probably expecting another complaint about the delay. "I need to speak with your supervisor," Sarah said quietly. "I'm an airline pilot and I think you have a serious problem with that aircraft." The agent's eyes widened. "You're a pilot?" "Yes, and based on what I've observed today, that plane shouldn't be cleared for takeoff until you've thoroughly checked the hydraulic systems." Within minutes, Sarah found herself in a small office behind the gate, explaining her qualifications to 3 airport officials and a maintenance supervisor. They were skeptical at first. After all, she looked like just another tourist. But when she started using technical aviation terms and accurately describing the specific signs she had observed, they began to listen. The maintenance supervisor admitted what Sarah had already suspected. The aircraft had experienced a hydraulic leak during its previous flight. They had attempted repairs, but the backup systems were showing inconsistent readings. The airline was under pressure to get the flight out on schedule, and some officials wanted to declare the plane airworthy despite the concerns. "If that plane takes off with faulty hydraulics," Sarah told them, "those 320 people might not make it to Phuket alive." The room fell silent. Sarah had just put into words what everyone was thinking, but nobody wanted to say. The weight of 320 lives hung in the air between them, and suddenly her vacation seemed like the least important thing in the world. The maintenance supervisor, a man named Somchai with grease-stained hands and worried eyes, spread out technical diagrams on the small office desk. Sarah studied them carefully, her pilot training taking over completely. She forgot about her vacation, her backpack, her plans to relax on the beach in Phuket. "Show me exactly where the leak occurred," she said, pointing to the hydraulic system schematic. Somchai traced his finger along a series of lines representing fluid pipes. "Here, in the primary system. We replaced the damaged section, but the pressure readings are still not stable." Sarah examined the repair documentation. Her experience told her that hydraulic problems were often more complex than they appeared on the surface. One small leak could indicate larger issues throughout the system. The fact that pressure readings remained unstable after repairs was a major red flag. "Have you tested the backup systems under full load?" she asked. The maintenance team exchanged glances. "We ran basic tests," one technician admitted, "but full load testing would require delaying the flight for at least 6 more hours," the airport operations manager interrupted. He was a thin man in a crisp uniform who had been checking his watch every few minutes. "The airline is already facing massive compensation costs for this delay. If we delay further without absolute certainty of danger," Sarah understood the pressure he was under. Airlines lost thousands of dollars for every hour a flight was delayed. Passengers demanded compensation, crews went into overtime, and airport slots were missed. But she also understood what happened when hydraulic systems failed at 35,000 feet. "I've seen hydraulic failures before," Sarah said quietly. "United Flight 232 in Sioux City. The pilots were heroes, but 111 people still died because they couldn't control the plane properly. All because of hydraulic failure." The room went silent. Everyone in aviation knew that story. It was a nightmare scenario that had led to major changes in aircraft design and emergency procedures. Through the office window, Sarah could see passengers still waiting at the gate. A mother was trying to keep her 2 young children entertained with a coloring book. An elderly man was showing vacation photos to his wife on his phone. A group of college students were laughing about something, probably excited about their tropical adventure. None of them knew their lives might depend on the decision being made in this small, cluttered office. "Let me look at the actual aircraft," Sarah requested. 20 minutes later, she found herself in coveralls following Somchai under the belly of the Boeing 777. The plane was massive, its engines alone taller than most people. But Sarah felt comfortable in this environment. She had done her share of pre-flight inspections during her years as a pilot. The repair work looked professional, but Sarah's experienced eye caught details that troubled her. The replacement hydraulic line was slightly different from the original specification. The connections were tight, but there were small signs of stress in the surrounding components. "This isn't just about the leak you fixed," she told Somchai. "The hydraulic failure was probably caused by metal fatigue in this section. Look here." She pointed to microscopic cracks in a joint that connected to the backup system. "If the backup fails during flight, the pilots won't be able to control landing gear, flaps, or steering." Somchai examined the area Sarah had identified. His face grew pale as he saw what she was pointing out. He called over 2 other technicians and they began a more thorough inspection. Meanwhile, back at the gate, passengers were growing increasingly impatient. The airline had now announced another 2-hour delay for additional safety checks. Some passengers were demanding to speak with managers. Others were trying to rebook on different flights. The gate agent looked overwhelmed. Sarah climbed out from under the aircraft and cleaned her hands with an industrial wipe. She had found 3 more potential failure points in the hydraulic system. Any one of them could cause a catastrophic emergency during flight. Her phone buzzed with a message from her friend Emma, who was waiting for her in Phuket. "Where are you? Your flight was supposed to land 2 hours ago." Sarah stared at the message for a moment. Emma had rented a beachfront bungalow for them to share. They had planned to spend the next week scuba diving, eating amazing Thai food and forgetting about their stressful jobs back home. It was supposed to be the perfect end to Sarah's 3-month break from reality. But 320 people were depending on her expertise, even though they didn't know it yet. She walked back to the office where airport officials were debating their options. The airline's regional director had arrived by helicopter from Bangkok, and he was not happy about the delays. He was a large man in an expensive suit who spoke in rapid, angry Thai to the local staff. "We're losing money every minute this plane sits on the ground," he was saying in English when Sarah entered. "Unless you can prove this aircraft is unsafe, we need to get it in the air immediately." Sarah cleared her throat. "I can prove it's unsafe." The director turned to look at her, clearly annoyed. "And who exactly are you?" "I'm Captain Sarah Martinez, certified to fly Boeing 777s. I have 8,000 flight hours and 12 years of experience. And this aircraft has multiple hydraulic system failures that make it unsafe for passenger service." The director studied her tourist clothes and skeptical expression. "You're telling me that you, a random passenger who looks like a backpacker, are actually a qualified airline pilot?" Sarah pulled out her phone and showed him her pilot's license photo and certification documents she kept in digital format. She also showed him her LinkedIn profile, which listed her employment with a major U.S. airline and her flight certifications. The director's attitude changed immediately. "Why didn't anyone tell me we had a qualified pilot among the passengers?" "Because until an hour ago I was just trying to take a vacation," Sarah replied. "But now I've identified at least 4 potential failure points in your hydraulic systems. If that plane takes off, there's a significant chance it won't be able to land safely." The weight of her words settled over the room. 4 failure points, 320 lives. One decision that would determine whether people went home to their families or never saw them again. The director looked at his watch, then at the maintenance reports, then at Sarah. The cost of further delays would be enormous. But the cost of a crash would be infinitely worse. The airline director, Mr. Facorn, studied Sarah's credentials on her phone screen. His fingers drummed nervously on the desk as he processed the situation. Here was a qualified pilot who had identified serious safety concerns, but grounding the aircraft would cost his company millions. "Captain Martinez," he said finally, "I need you to understand our position. This flight has 320 passengers who have been waiting for 4 hours. We have connecting flights, hotel reservations, and tour packages that depend on this schedule. If we ground this aircraft based on your assessment, people die if you don't," Sarah interrupted. "Mr. Facorn, I've flown planes like this one hundreds of times. What I found under that aircraft isn't a minor maintenance issue. It's a disaster waiting to happen." Som Chai, the maintenance supervisor, supported Sarah's assessment. His team had completed the more thorough inspection she had requested, and they found exactly what she had predicted. The hydraulic system problems went far deeper than the original leak. "The metal fatigue is extensive," Som Chai reported. "If we had taken off with these conditions, we would likely have experienced complete hydraulic failure within the first hour of flight." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Complete hydraulic failure meant the pilots would lose control of landing gear, wing flaps, steering, and brakes. Even the most skilled pilots would struggle to land safely under those conditions. Sarah thought about her own experience with emergency situations. She had once landed a plane safely after a bird strike disabled one engine. Another time, she had navigated through severe turbulence that injured several flight attendants. But hydraulic failure was different. It was the kind of emergency that tested the limits of pilot skill and aircraft design. "How long will proper repairs take?" Mr. Facorn asked. "At least 18 hours, Som Chai admitted. "We need to replace multiple components and run complete system tests. This isn't something we can rush." 18 hours meant canceling the flight entirely. The aircraft would need to be taken out of service. Passengers would need to be accommodated on other flights, and the financial impact would be massive. Mr. Facorn's phone was already buzzing with calls from Bangkok headquarters, but Sarah wasn't thinking about money. She was thinking about the family she had seen at the gate, the mother with 2 young children who were excited about their first trip to Thailand. She thought about the elderly couple celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary with a dream vacation. She thought about the college students who had saved money for months to afford this trip. "I'll take full responsibility for grounding this aircraft," Sarah told Mr. Facorn. "Put it in writing that the decision was made based on my technical assessment as a qualified pilot. This was a significant offer. If Sarah was wrong, she would be legally liable for the massive costs of grounding the flight. Her pilot's license could be suspended, her career could be over, and she could face lawsuits from the airline and affected passengers. But if she was right, 320 people would live to see another day. Mr. Facorn studied her face, looking for any sign of doubt. Sarah met his gaze steadily. She had made her decision based on professional expertise and moral conviction. She wouldn't back down. "Very well," he said finally. "But I need you to explain the situation to the passengers. They deserve to hear from the pilot who made this recommendation." 20 minutes later, Sarah found herself standing at the departure gate, facing 320 confused and increasingly angry passengers. She was still wearing her tourist clothes, but now she also wore a visitor's badge that identified her as Technical Consultant, Aircraft Safety. The crowd was restless. People had been waiting for over 5 hours with minimal information. Some were demanding refunds, others were threatening to file complaints, and many were simply frustrated and tired. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah began, her voice carrying the authority she had developed from years of speaking to passengers during flights. "My name is Captain Sarah Martinez. I'm a commercial airline pilot, and I need to explain why your flight has been canceled." A murmur went through the crowd. Several people looked skeptical. After all, she looked like just another stranded passenger. "I was traveling as a passenger today on vacation," Sarah continued. "But during the delay I noticed signs of serious mechanical problems with the aircraft. As a qualified pilot, I felt obligated to investigate." She explained the hydraulic system problems in terms that non-pilots could understand. She talked about the safety systems that keep aircraft in the air and help them land safely. She described what could happen if those systems failed during flight. "I know this is incredibly inconvenient," Sarah said. "I know you have reservations, connections, and plans that are now disrupted. But after examining this aircraft personally, I can tell you with absolute certainty that it is not safe to fly today." A man in a business suit stood up angrily. "How do we know you're really a pilot? You look like a tourist. This could be some kind of scam." Sarah pulled out her phone and showed her pilot's license to several passengers in the front rows. She answered technical questions that demonstrated her expertise. She explained her background and why she was qualified to make this assessment. Gradually, the mood in the gate area began to shift. Instead of anger directed at airline incompetence, passengers started to realize they were looking at someone who had potentially saved their lives. A woman holding a toddler approached Sarah. "You're saying this plane could have crashed?" Sarah nodded gravely. "The hydraulic problems we found could have caused loss of control during landing. Even with skilled pilots, the outcome would have been very uncertain." The woman looked at her child, then back at Sarah. "Thank you," she whispered, one by one. Other passengers began to understand the gravity of the situation. The elderly couple celebrating their anniversary shook Sarah's hand. The college students asked questions about aviation safety. The business travelers started making calls to rearrange their schedules without complaint. But Sarah knew the hardest part was still ahead. She had grounded an aircraft and disrupted hundreds of lives based on her professional judgment. Now she had to live with the consequences of that decision, whatever they might be. The next several hours were a whirlwind of activity. Sarah found herself at the center of a complex operation to accommodate 320 stranded passengers. The airline had to find seats on other flights, arrange hotel rooms for overnight stays, and provide meal vouchers for everyone affected. Mr. Facorn, despite his initial reluctance, had taken Sarah's recommendation seriously. He authorized his team to work with other airlines to find alternative flights. The airport opened additional counters to process rebookings. Ground crew worked overtime to manage luggage transfers. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility for disrupting so many travel plans. She watched families trying to explain to confused children why their vacation was starting differently than expected. She saw business travelers frantically rescheduling important meetings. She observed elderly passengers struggling with the physical demands of another long wait in the airport. But every time doubt crept into her mind, she thought about what she had seen under that aircraft. The metal fatigue, the stress fractures, the backup systems that were one failure away from complete breakdown. She had made the right decision even if it was causing immediate hardship. Around midnight, Somchai found Sarah in the airport coffee shop, where she was nursing her fourth cup of Thai coffee and trying to process everything that had happened. Captain Martinez, he said, sitting down across from her. I wanted to thank you. Sarah looked up, surprised. Thank me. I've caused your company a massive headache. Somchai shook his head. My team finished the detailed inspection an hour ago. We found 7 separate points of potential failure in the hydraulic systems. 7. Any one of them could have caused a crash. He showed her photographs on his tablet. The images revealed the extent of the metal fatigue and system degradation that her initial inspection had uncovered. What had appeared to be a simple leak was actually the visible symptom of widespread structural problems. How long had these problems been developing? Sarah asked. Probably months, Somchai admitted. The aircraft passed routine inspections, but those don't look for the kind of microscopic stress fractures you identified. Your pilot's eye caught things our standard procedures missed. Sarah studied the photographs, her professional training helping her understand the technical implications. This aircraft had been a flying time bomb. The original hydraulic leak had been like a warning light that everyone had ignored while focusing on the immediate problem. What would have happened if the plane had taken off? She asked, though she dreaded the answer. Somchai was quiet for a moment. Based on what we found, complete hydraulic failure would have occurred within the first 90 minutes of flight. The pilots would have lost control of landing gear, flaps, and steering. Even if they had managed to reach an emergency landing site, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Both of them knew that hydraulic failure at cruising altitude was often fatal, regardless of pilot skill or emergency procedures. 20 people, Sarah whispered. 20 people are going home to their families because of your decision, Somchai corrected. The next morning, Sarah's story began to spread. Airport security footage showed her crawling under the aircraft in borrowed coveralls, examining hydraulic systems while still wearing her tourist backpack. Passengers started posting on social media about the mystery pilot who had saved their flight. A local Thai newspaper picked up the story first. Then international aviation blogs began reporting on the incident. By afternoon, major news outlets were calling the airport, trying to reach Sarah for interviews. But Sarah wasn't interested in publicity. She was sitting in a quiet corner of the airport, video calling Emma in Phuket to explain why she hadn't arrived as scheduled. So let me get this straight, Emma said from her beachfront bungalow. You've been pretending to be a regular tourist for 3 months, but yesterday you revealed you're actually a pilot and saved 320 people from a plane crash? Sarah laughed despite her exhaustion. That's about right. Although technically I prevented a potential crash. The plane never took off. Emma shook her head in amazement. Sarah, do you realize what you've done? You're going to be famous. This is the kind of story that makes international news. I don't want to be famous, Sarah replied. I just wanted to take a vacation and figure out my life. But fame was already finding her. A CNN producer had tracked down her phone number and left 3 voicemails requesting an interview. The airline's corporate communications team wanted her to participate in a press conference. Aviation safety organizations were calling her a hero. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. She had taken this extended break because she was tired of the pressure and responsibility of being a pilot. She had wanted to escape the weight of carrying people's lives in her hands. But even on vacation, disguised as a tourist, she couldn't escape who she was. Late that afternoon, Mr. Facorn found her in the same coffee shop where Somchai had thanked her the night before. Captain Martinez, he said, I owe you an apology. When you first identified the problems with our aircraft, I was more concerned about cost than safety. That was wrong. Sarah nodded, appreciating his honesty. I also want to offer you something, he continued. Our airline is expanding operations. We're looking for experienced pilots, especially those with your expertise in safety systems. If you're interested in a position based in Bangkok, the offer was tempting. Thailand was beautiful. The airline seemed committed to safety after this incident, and it would be a fresh start in her aviation career. But Sarah realized she wasn't ready to make that decision yet. I appreciate the offer, she said, but I still need to finish figuring out what I want to do with my life. Mr. Facorn smiled. The offer will remain open. Take your time. As evening approached, Sarah received word that the passengers from the grounded flight had been successfully accommodated on other airlines. Everyone was either already in Phuket or scheduled to arrive within the next 24 hours. Their vacations and business trips would proceed, just delayed by about a day. Standing at the window overlooking the airport tarmac, Sarah watched aircraft taking off and landing in the distance. Each plane carried dozens or hundreds of people trusting their lives to pilots they would never meet. It was a responsibility she had carried for years, and yesterday she had been reminded why it mattered so much. Her phone buzzed with another interview request, this time from a documentary filmmaker who wanted to tell her story. Sarah deleted the message without reading it fully. She wasn't ready for that kind of attention, but she was starting to understand something important about herself. No matter how far she traveled or how long she stayed away from flying, she would always be a pilot. It wasn't just her job, it was who she was. 3 days after the incident, Sarah finally made it to Phuket on a different flight. Emma was waiting at the airport with a taxi and a huge smile, but also with a stack of newspapers and printouts from the internet. "You're famous," Emma announced, showing Sarah the headlines. "Look at this, mystery tourist pilot saves 320 lives. And this one, backpacker reveals hidden identity to prevent aviation disaster. You're trending on Twitter." Sarah groaned as she read the articles during the drive to their beachfront bungalow. Most of the reporting was accurate, but some outlets had sensationalized the story. One tabloid claimed she was an undercover aviation safety investigator. Another suggested she was running from a dark secret in her past. A few articles focused more on her appearance than her qualifications, describing her as the pilot who looked like a tourist. "The Aviation Safety Foundation wants to give you an award," Emma continued, scrolling through messages on Sarah's phone. "And there are at least 50 interview requests here. Good Morning America, BBC, CNN International." "Sarah, this is huge." But Sarah was exhausted. The past 3 days had been a constant stream of phone calls, meetings with airline officials, and paperwork related to her technical assessment of the aircraft. She had barely slept, living on airport coffee and stress. All she wanted was to sit on the beach and remember why she had taken this vacation in the first place. Their bungalow was perfect, a traditional Thai design with an open-air living area that faced the turquoise waters of the Andaman Sea. Palm trees swayed in the ocean breeze, and the sound of waves promised the relaxation Sarah desperately needed. But even in paradise, she couldn't escape her new reality. Her phone rang constantly with calls from reporters, aviation industry organizations, and other airlines interested in hiring her. She finally turned it off and left it in the bungalow while she and Emma walked along the beach. "Talk to me," Emma said as they strolled along the sand. "How are you processing all this?" Sarah was quiet for several minutes, watching long-tail boats bob in the distance. "I took this trip to figure out if I still wanted to be a pilot," she finally said. "I was burned out, tired of the responsibility, tired of the pressure. I thought maybe I could find a different path. And now I realize I can't stop being a pilot even when I'm not flying. It's not just what I do, it's who I am. When I saw those passengers at risk, I couldn't walk away. I couldn't pretend I didn't have the expertise to help them." Emma nodded thoughtfully. She had known Sarah since college and had watched her struggle with the demands of her aviation career. "So what happens now? Do you go back to Chicago and your old job?" Sarah shook her head. "I don't think so. This whole experience has shown me that I need something different. I want to use my skills to help people, but maybe not in the same way I was doing before." That evening, as they sat on their bungalow's deck watching the sunset, Sarah finally turned her phone back on. Among the dozens of messages was one that caught her attention. It was from Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the head of aviation safety research at MIT. "Captain Martinez," the message read, "I've been following your story with great interest. Your ability to identify complex systemic failures during a routine inspection is exactly the kind of expertise we need in aviation safety research. Would you be interested in discussing opportunities to join our team? We're working on developing better inspection protocols to prevent exactly the kind of problems you identified." Sarah showed the message to Emma. "This is interesting," Emma said. "Research instead of flying passengers? I'd still be using my pilot experience, but focused on prevention rather than just transportation," Sarah mused. "Maybe I could help develop better safety procedures, work on improving aircraft design, train other pilots to recognize the kinds of problems I found in Bangkok." The idea appealed to her, more than returning to her old routine of flying the same routes with the same schedule pressures. Research would let her contribute to aviation safety on a broader scale, potentially preventing disasters before they happened, rather than just avoiding them one flight at a time. Over the next few days, Sarah began to see her options more clearly. She could return to commercial flying with any number of airlines that had reached out to her. She could pursue safety research and education. She could even start her own consulting company, helping airlines improve their maintenance and inspection procedures. But first, she needed to understand what had really happened in Bangkok. She spent hours reading technical reports about the aircraft that had been grounded. The investigation revealed that the problems she had identified were symptoms of a larger issue with the airline's maintenance protocols. Routine inspections had missed the developing problems because inspectors weren't trained to look for the specific signs of stress fracture that Sarah had recognized. "You know what's interesting?" Sarah told Emma one evening as they shared dinner at a beachside restaurant. "This wasn't just about one plane or one airline. The maintenance procedures that missed these problems are standard across the industry. How many other aircraft might have similar hidden issues?" Emma could see the passion returning to Sarah's voice as she talked about aviation safety. This was different from the exhausted, burned-out pilot who had started this vacation 3 months ago. "It sounds like you found your calling," Emma observed. "Maybe I have," Sarah agreed. "I always thought being a pilot meant flying planes. But maybe it really means using everything I know about aviation to keep people safe, whether I'm in the cockpit or not." The next morning, Sarah drafted a response to Dr. Walsh's message, expressing interest in discussing research opportunities. She also began outlining ideas for improving inspection protocols based on what she had learned in Bangkok. As she worked on her laptop while Emma explored the local markets, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years: excitement about her future in aviation. The burnout and exhaustion that had driven her to take this extended break were being replaced by a sense of purpose and possibility. She looked out at the ocean, where a small plane was pulling an advertising banner across the blue sky. 3 months ago, seeing that aircraft would have reminded her of everything she wanted to escape about flying. Now it reminded her of everything she loved about aviation and why it mattered so much to get it right. Her phone buzzed with a text from her former supervisor in Chicago. "Sarah, we heard about what happened in Thailand. Amazing work. Your job here is waiting whenever you're ready to come back." Sarah smiled as she typed her response. "Thanks, but I think I'm ready for something new. Something that lets me use what I learned in Bangkok to help more people than just the passengers on my flights." For the first time in months, Sarah was excited about going home, not to return to her old life, but to build a new one. Sarah's remaining week in Phuket transformed from a simple beach vacation into an intensive period of reflection and planning. She spent mornings swimming and relaxing, but afternoons found her on video calls with aviation safety experts around the world who had heard about her story. Dr. Walsh at MIT was particularly enthusiastic about Sarah's potential contribution to aviation research. During their first video call, she explained how Sarah's real-world experience could complement the theoretical work being done in academic settings. "What you did in Bangkok demonstrates the kind of practical expertise we desperately need," Dr. Walsh explained. "You saw patterns that sophisticated testing equipment missed. That's the kind of human insight that could revolutionize how we approach aircraft safety." Sarah was intrigued by the research projects Dr. Walsh described. One involved developing artificial intelligence systems that could analyze aircraft maintenance data to predict potential failures before they became dangerous. Another focused on improving training programs for maintenance technicians to help them recognize subtle signs of system degradation. "The technical knowledge is important," Sarah said during their conversation, "but there's also an intuitive element to identifying problems. Sometimes you just sense that something isn't right even when all the readings look normal." "Exactly," Dr. Walsh responded. "That's what we want to study and potentially teach to others. Your ability to translate years of flying experience into immediate problem recognition. That's a skill set the industry needs to understand and replicate." But Sarah also received other interesting offers. Boeing's safety division wanted to hire her as a consultant to review their inspection protocols. The Federal Aviation Administration offered her a position in their accident investigation unit. A documentary production company wanted to follow her story as she transitioned from anonymous tourist to aviation safety advocate. Emma watched her friend field these opportunities with growing amazement. "6 months ago, you were ready to quit flying altogether," she pointed out one evening as they watched fishing boats return to the harbor. "Now you're being recruited by everyone in the aviation world." Strange how life works, Sarah agreed. I thought I needed to get away from aviation to find happiness. Instead, I found a way to love aviation again by discovering how I could contribute differently. The week also brought unexpected personal connections. She received hundreds of messages through social media from people whose lives had been touched by aviation accidents. Family members who had lost loved ones in crashes thanked her for her dedication to safety. Other pilots shared their own stories of identifying potential problems and making difficult decisions to ground aircraft. One message particularly moved her. It came from Maria Santos, whose husband had died in a regional airline crash 5 years earlier, due to maintenance failures that investigators later determined could have been prevented with better inspection. Procedures. Reading about what you did in Thailand gave me hope, Maria wrote. My husband died because people ignored warning signs that were probably visible to an experienced pilot like you. If your work can prevent other families from going through what we experienced, then his death might have some meaning. Sarah showed the message to Emma, who saw tears in her friend's eyes for the first time since the Bangkok incident. This is bigger than just your career, isn't it? Emma observed. Much bigger, Sarah replied. I'm starting to understand that I've been given a platform to make a real difference in aviation safety. Not just for the passengers on flights I might pilot, but potentially for millions of people who fly every year. As her vacation neared its end, Sarah made several important decisions. She would accept Dr. Walsh's offer to join the MIT research team, at least initially as a visiting researcher while she explored this new direction. She would also establish a consulting practice to work with airlines on improving their safety protocols, using her experience in Bangkok as a foundation. But perhaps most importantly, she decided to speak publicly about aviation safety. Despite her natural preference for privacy, Sarah realized that her story had given her a unique opportunity to educate the flying public about the complexity and importance of aircraft, maintenance, and safety procedures. Her first major interview was scheduled with CNN International for the week after her return to the United States. The producer wanted to focus not just on the dramatic rescue in Bangkok, but on Sarah's broader insights about aviation safety and her vision for preventing similar incidents. I want people to understand that flying is incredibly safe because of the dedication of thousands of professionals who work behind the scenes, Sarah told Emma as they practiced potential interview questions. Pilots, mechanics, air traffic controllers, safety inspectors, we all take the responsibility of protecting passengers very seriously. But the system isn't perfect, and when we find ways to make it better, we have an obligation to act. On their last night in Phuket, Sarah and Emma sat on the beach watching stars reflect on the calm ocean water. A commercial airliner passed overhead, its navigation lights blinking steadily as it followed the airway toward Bangkok. Any regrets about how this vacation turned out? Emma asked. Sarah thought about the question carefully. She had come to Thailand seeking escape and clarity about her future. Instead, she had found herself thrust into the spotlight and committed to a path she hadn't expected. No regrets, she said finally. I got exactly what I needed, just not in the way I expected. I found my purpose again. And the 320 people from that flight, they got to continue their lives because I happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right knowledge. That's not a coincidence I take lightly. Emma smiled in the darkness. So Captain Sarah Martinez is officially back? Captain Sarah Martinez is officially evolved, Sarah corrected. I'm still the same person who loves flying and aviation safety, but now I understand that I can protect people in ways I never considered before. The plane overhead disappeared into the distance, carrying its passengers safely toward their destination. Sarah felt a familiar sense of satisfaction watching it go, knowing that somewhere up there, professional pilots were doing their job with the same dedication to safety that had driven her actions in Bangkok. Tomorrow she would fly back to Chicago and begin the next chapter of her career. But tonight she was content to sit on a Thai beach, listening to the ocean waves and feeling grateful for the unexpected journey that had brought her to this moment of clarity and purpose. 6 months after the Bangkok incident, Sarah stood in front of a packed auditorium at the International Aviation Safety Conference in Geneva. The audience included pilots, maintenance supervisors, airline executives, and safety regulators from around the world. Her presentation was titled Hidden Failures: What Tourist Eyes Can Teach Aviation Professionals. The transformation in her life had been remarkable. She had joined MIT's aviation safety research team and was already leading 3 major studies on improving inspection protocols. Her consulting work had taken her to airlines across 5 continents, where she helped develop new training programs based on her Bangkok experience. The CNN interview had led to speaking engagements, advisory positions, and collaboration requests from throughout the aviation industry. But more importantly, her work was already saving lives. 2 airlines had identified and corrected serious maintenance issues using inspection techniques Sarah had developed. A regional carrier in South America had grounded an aircraft after their newly trained mechanics recognized signs of hydraulic stress that would have been missed under their old procedures. The aircraft I examined in Bangkok had passed multiple routine inspections, Sarah told the Geneva audience. Every checklist had been completed. Every test had shown acceptable results. But the plane was still dangerous because our standard procedures weren't designed to catch the kind of systemic failures that actually cause crashes. She clicked to a slide showing photographs from the Bangkok aircraft investigation. The images revealed the extent of the hidden damage that could have caused catastrophic failure during flight. This wasn't about incompetent maintenance or cutting corners on safety, she continued. This was about a gap between what we think we're checking and what actually threatens passenger safety. The maintenance team was following procedures perfectly. The procedures were just inadequate for detecting this type of problem. In the audience, Somchai from Bangkok Airport watched with pride as Sarah explained how their experience had led to industry-wide improvements in hydraulic system inspection protocols. The techniques she had developed were now being adopted by airlines around the world. After her presentation, Sarah was approached by dozens of aviation professionals wanting to learn more about her methods. But the conversation that meant the most to her came from Captain Rodriguez, an airline pilot from Mexico. "Captain Martinez," he said, "I wanted to thank you personally. Last month I was doing a pre-flight inspection using your techniques, and I found stress fractures in a wing component that our maintenance team had missed. We grounded the aircraft, and investigation revealed that the wing could have failed during flight. Your work probably saved my passengers' lives." Stories like this had become common in Sarah's new life. Her Bangkok experience had started a ripple effect throughout the aviation industry, leading to improved safety procedures and better training programs. The MIT research team estimated that her contributions had already prevented at least 3 potential crashes and would likely save hundreds of lives over the coming years. But Sarah hadn't forgotten the personal cost of her decision in Bangkok. During a quiet moment at the Geneva conference, she called Mr. Facorn, who had become an unexpected friend and advocate for her safety work. "How is the airline recovering from the costs of that day?" she asked. "Actually, we're stronger than ever," he replied. "The publicity from your story attracted safety-conscious passengers who specifically choose our airline because they know we take expert recommendations seriously. Our reputation for prioritizing safety over schedule has become a competitive advantage." This outcome had surprised many industry observers. Rather than suffering from the negative publicity of a grounded aircraft, the Thai airline had benefited from being associated with exceptional safety standards and responsiveness to expert advice. Sarah's personal life had also evolved in unexpected ways. The attention from her story had initially been overwhelming, but she had learned to use her platform responsibly. She had established the Martinez Aviation Safety Foundation, which provided grants for safety research and training programs in developing countries where aviation infrastructure was still developing. Emma had watched her friend's transformation with amazement. "Remember when you thought you wanted to quit flying and become a yoga instructor in Costa Rica?" she teased during one of their regular video calls. "I still might do that someday," Sarah laughed. "But right now, I feel like I'm exactly where I need to be." The foundation had already funded safety training programs in 6 countries and was developing educational materials to help passengers understand aviation safety. Sarah believed that informed travelers could be partners in maintaining safety standards by asking appropriate questions and reporting concerns. 1 year after Bangkok, Sarah received a package with no return address. Inside was a photo album filled with pictures from 320 people who had been on the grounded flight. There were wedding photos, graduation pictures, new babies, and family reunions, all the life events that had happened because those passengers had made it safely home. The final page contained a group letter signed by all 320 passengers. Captain Martinez, we don't know if you'll ever read this, but we wanted you to know that your decision to speak up in Bangkok changed everything for us. Not just that day, but every day since. We got to live our lives because you cared enough to act on your expertise. Thank you for reminding us that there are still people in the world who will do the right thing, even when it's difficult. Sarah kept the album on her desk at MIT, where it served as a daily reminder of why her work mattered. She had started her journey as a burned-out pilot looking for a way out of aviation. She had ended up as a safety advocate whose work was transforming the industry she had once wanted to leave. During quiet moments, Sarah sometimes wondered what would have happened if she had stayed in her seat at Bangkok Airport, kept her pilot identity secret, and boarded that dangerous aircraft along with everyone else. The thought always reminded her that expertise without action is worthless, and that sometimes the most important decisions are the ones that disrupt our plans. She had looked like any other tourist that day in Bangkok. But when 320 lives were at stake, she had chosen to be exactly who she was, a pilot with the knowledge and courage to speak up for safety. That decision had saved lives and transformed an entire industry's approach to preventing disasters. And every day, as commercial aircraft safely carried millions of passengers around the world, a small part of that safety was due to the tourist who revealed she was a pilot when it mattered most.